Hi there, I'm Andrew. You're watching ThatGamerAjax, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my home games Dungeon Master. You've seen him here on the channel before. This is Alex. He is getting back into streaming. He's GuppyTehCat there. This guy has been running our D&D campaign more or less like since I joined the friend group a couple of years ago, and we just wanted to talk a little bit about how to run a horrifying encounter. Just as a quick side note, what really inspired this was that our home game met last week, and Alex here decided that he wanted to give us probably one of the scariest villains that I've ever seen in a long time, that elected to ignore whatever our party was doing, spent the first like 3 rounds of combat just pushing our warlock outside of a building in order to take it outside, and then just kind of ignored whatever we did so he could just basically murder this warlock because he wouldn't give him the information that he wanted. So, Alex, is there anything else that I missed in your introduction that you would just like to point out before we get kind of into this interview?
No, I think you pretty much hit it on the nail. That was pretty much as simple as it is, at least from your perspective. I think that was perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so I would also like to just point out that Alex has a lot of great horror-themed one-shots that he's run for our group. I remember we've done Eldritch Abominations, we've done haunted houses. This most recent encounter, you've definitely like brought in some kind of like almost like Lovecraftian style horror elements into our current campaign that's been going on for a little while. Alex, could you just tell people what are some general tips and tricks that you would like to give to people into running effective horror, especially like adding those elements into their games?
Yeah. So specifically for horror, it's something that you have to also have to kind of talk through with your party. I feel like if it's not something that your party really cares about or likes, it's not going to be always the serious thing for them. I also feel personally that you have to find a really good balance between horror and like something super tense and serious and dramatic, and sometimes something not quite as heavy, something a little bit lighter. The reason for that, because it just highlights these few moments a whole lot more.
Yeah. Now I know that like I actually talked a little bit about our encounter a bit more on TikTok, and that video has been also kind of blowing up lately. And there were a lot of people that seemed to think that it was a really good idea. But can you just tell me like what was going like through your mind, kind of like behind the screen, like what made it that way? Like, were you worried that we might do too much damage, you know, that we would have, there's a chance that we could have beaten this guy? Because everything that was presented was that this was almost a hopeless fight, and we were just trying to get our friend out of there alive.
Yeah, so first things off, let's talk about the party composition. So we have, I believe, a party of four level 5 characters. So you guys are up there, kind of heroes of the town. You're getting up there, but you're still pretty low level considering.
Yeah, my storm sorcerer has 36 health and 11 AC.
Exactly. And I mean, for those of y'all who don't know, at least when I spoke to the party through session 0, we planned this out to be a very lengthy campaign. We're thinking of up towards level 20, even thinking of going even beyond that, creating Paragon levels. So we expect a very long game. So comparatively to that end game, level 5, low level, 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was so. This villain is not necessarily someone I had planned for y'all to not necessarily encounter, but to combat or deal with immediately. I wanted to introduce him. So I wanted to create that dramatic feel, not just him coming out of nowhere. Hey, by the way, this is the villain you hear about. Done. No, I wanted to give him a true introduction. So you guys had other things going on, but I dropped little hints of what was happening in this town. And so with a giant ritual going on, you see this one, obviously a cultist that's working under him, but also this giant hulking of a man behind it all.
Yeah. And the fact that you had it that way, like this, like you described him as like being like 10 feet tall, like armor clad, and he just like left his weapons behind. Like that, I like from a player perspective, That's like very effective. And like this guy's holding back. Like he is like self-imposing a nerf, and he still honestly destroyed us. Like it was ridiculous. But I was also just like wondering, like, so when you're creating these kind of like horror themed, or like even with some of the one shots that you've run before, like when you are wanting to build these out, what goes through your mind, and how are you planning to make this kind of scary? Do you have like other influences that you pull from? Are there like types of media that you enjoy that you want to try to like recreate, especially like with something like D&D?
There's far too much media. A quote that I really like, I can't remember who said it, and I don't remember the exact quote, but the uh the more obscure ideas that you pull from other stories, the better your DMing is. And that's honestly true. Like if I pull from something like a media, let's say Lord of the Rings, as an example, everybody knows Lord of the Rings. So if I pull something from there, it's going to be easily memorable. It might not come out as quite as unique, but if you pull from somebody obscure and use your inspiration, use that as inspiration to work on something, it comes out a whole lot better.
Right.
But with horror, specifically with this encounter, since it was more of a, this is a villain that you guys will deal with in the future, I hadn't planned for y'all to actually combat him, but if it were to happen,
it was going to be one-sided.
Essentially, in his mind, you all were beneath him. He didn't have to worry about you all. So that's how he dealt with the situation. And obviously that the ways that I dealt with that was because, or that I went through with that, was he wasn't using his weapons. He wasn't using any spells. He used a few unique abilities that he had. If I remember correctly, he used the one where he would entrap people in the circle of fire around him. It's a little bit of a Colosseum. And I thought that was particularly really cool.
And I will say from a player perspective, like it was very thematic. Like as soon as that happened, I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. And like you said, he skipped his turns. He did a bit of a monologue and then did nothing else. It's him pushing, this is what I want to know, this is what I want, and I'm not going to push it because I don't need to. You are beneath me. You will give me what I want.
Yeah. And personally, I think that's also just some really good, that is a good example of like how to create a villain that is just so easy to hate, is the fact that like that arrogance like really did come and show through. Now, like, I mean, obviously I don't want you to like spill all the secrets. Like, you know, I am a player in the campaign. I don't want to know everything that's going on behind the curtain. But do you have any like kind of where did you learn how to like introduce horror elements? Like, are there other games that you played? Are there like books that you've read, like movies that you watch? Like what are some of your personal favorite things to draw from?
Oh, that's so I would never pinpoint it to one single thing. I've enjoyed horror throughout my life. Call of Cthulhu, I have a lot of experience playing Call of Cthulhu. Even reading the adventure modules or the story modules, whatever they're called there, are really good. And that starts giving you something into like cosmic horror and the unknown. That's a really great way to use in D&D, because having tidbits of information but having a wall of unknown things happening to separate your story from the players is terrifying. But even a lot of very old movies, Alien, the original Predators, it's not always necessarily the actual movie, but putting yourself in the shoes of the protagonist in a horror movie, what makes it horrifying to them.
Okay.
Do the same thing to your players.
Okay. And really just like the last big question that I have for you when it comes to like horror, especially like in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, I feel like D&D does like a power fantasy very, very well. And I know that you've still introduced like, even when we were high level and some of like the one shots, and like I remember there were like horror elements in our Rise of Tiamat campaign that you introduced as like some like side homebrew content. Like have there been any struggles that you've had with a higher level party, and like how can you still effectively do horror in that case? I know with this it worked really well because we're still low level, we're still pretty squishy as a whole, but as those parties get into higher levels where people like want to see that peak D&D, what do you do then?
I will 100% tell you, higher levels in characters always make it more difficult for just about anything, including combat and horror. At least I feel. Now there's always ways around it. That's how if you can get your players to be invested in the backstory of their characters, so like they feel like their characters are organic and a living being, you can attack whatever their characters are motivated for or motivated by, or family, things like that.
Yeah, so basically just expect your players to give you all of the trauma that you can pull at.
Yes. A really great thing I like is not always like you. Of course, I like having my PCs have backstories, but you don't want trauma in their backstories. Make the trauma to motivate your players to do something. And I think this is a really great way to motivate them to hate my villain. It's not going to be a villain where, oh no, it's the end of the world, we have to stop him just because he's evil. No. At this point, this entire party hates this man with the entirety of their being because he killed their friend.
Yeah, and it being one of the players that had to witness it, yeah, I can say, like, I think I'm more motivated than anything to get stronger, just so we can return the favor. But I just wanted to kind of take a few minutes to pick your brain. Is there anything else that you would recommend for people if they're wanting to try to include some of these horror elements into their campaigns?
Yeah, so if you're trying in general just for horror, a couple of things that are really great to just add elements of horror is, one, you got to have the atmosphere. It's I think atmosphere is really the most important thing. I personally always like being very immersed in the game, so having music, maybe some props help if you're playing in person. For us, since we play over Discord, I do like to use either sound bits or a voice changer that can always make things a little bit more terrifying. Being theatrical with how you describe things is also really great to add to the atmosphere of it. Now, for actual enemies, you want to be as obscure yet detailed as possible, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Alex, just want to thank you for doing the relatively brief peek behind the curtain, especially with something that's been going on with our group for a little while. I hope that other people can find this to be really beneficial. Yeah, is there just anything that you'd like to plug real quick? I know we talked about your Twitch channel earlier, but maybe you can tell some people about what you're doing on there.
Yeah, just my Twitch channel. I usually just stream when I'm playing video games with friends. But I do plan on having some more workshopping for D&D. I think that would be fun content for me to actually explore in the future, because I really do like workshopping either enemies, PCs, villains, and stuff like that. It makes it a whole lot easier for me to dive myself into DMing. And then other than that, I play a lot of Magic the Gathering, so I'll probably be streaming some of that as well.
Okay, and I'll make sure that I have your Twitch channel linked in the description. So if you guys want to check out what Alex is up to these days, maybe just check there. We can include your Twitter if you'd like as well. I'm not sure how active you are on there, but yeah. So this is just a nice little one-on-one talk with my dungeon master. I mean, Alex is one of the guys that I personally really look up to. I've really enjoyed playing in his campaigns and his one-shots over the years. So hopefully you guys all got something out of this. But until next time. See you guys in the next video.
Cheers.